Hello, Bulldogs. In today's lesson, we will be learning about where do people in Europe live and why. And our objectives are, I can draw conclusions about population distribution in Europe, and I can describe how geography, which means climate and landforms, impacts population density. Let's review. Population density is how many people live in a certain area. It tells us how crowded a place is. It is measured by how many people live in a square mile or square kilometer area. An area that has high population density will show us a darker color, and you will see more people close together compared to an area with a low population density that will show us a lighter color, and we can see that people are spaced out. Remember, we also learned about urban and rural areas. Urban describes areas with high population density. Urban areas are crowded cities with a lot of people. In this image, we see a city with tall buildings, with building rising up. That means there is not enough land. A rural area is going to usually have low population density. Rural areas are typically called the countryside. So we see a lot of land and houses spaced out between one another. To analyze how geography impacts population distribution, we will need to look at several types of maps. One of the maps that will be useful to us is a political map. If you remember, political map shows countries, states, cities, and you can clearly see the borders between them. This is a political map of Europe. Some of the countries that you can see are located in Europe as Sweden, France, Poland, Germany, Italy. Another important map that can explain the population density is a physical map. A physical map shows the elevation of the land. In other words, how high the land is. The darker brown orange areas represent mountains. The lighter greener areas represent plains. And you will also find lakes and rivers, as well as other bodies of water on those kinds of maps. So if we look, some of the famous mountains located in Europe are the Pyrenees, the Apennines, the Balkan Mountains, the Alps, and others. And then the blue squiggly lines with the name of the river are the rivers. You can also see the name of the rivers, the Rhine, the Danube, the Volga. These are some of the rivers you find in Europe. Another important map that can explain where people live is a climate map. It shows you the climate zones of the region. The key is really important. It will give you the name of the climates. And remember, the climates that are polar or that are subarctic, these are your cold climate zones. And the climates that are temperate, which means mild, those will be most ideal for human habitation. And then the desert climates will be the areas that are going to be too hot. And finally, our population density map shows areas with high and low population density. Again, the key is really important. The darker areas will show you high population density areas, reds, dark browns, oranges, and the lighter colors, the lower yellows, the light yellows, will show you areas with the lowest population densities. So, in order for us to analyze how the geography affects population density, you often have to look at multiple maps. For example, if we look at this map of Europe, we're going to see that this area of Germany, the northern part of Germany, has a lot of people. It's highly densely populated. And you might wonder why that is so. Well, if you look on the physical map of Europe, you're going to notice that in this area, we have the North Sea. Remember, regions near water, near the coast, are important for trade. People have access to sea. This way they can trade goods with other nations via maritime routes, via sea routes. Here is another map. Once again, if you paid attention, you might have noticed that major cities in Europe, such as Paris, Rome, London, they are all located in areas that are highly populated. They're all in red areas on the map. So once again, you might be wondering why. Well, to answer this question, you might want to look at a map that shows major rivers in Europe. For example, you might notice that Paris is located in the area where the Seine River is. So let's look at one more example. If you've noticed, if you looked at this area in Europe, you notice that most of this part is red, but there is a region of lower population density in the middle of the red. So in other words, it's like orange, lighter yellow color here. So once again, you might be wondering why. Why suddenly there is not as many people living in this part of Europe? Well, you might want to look at the physical map of Europe. And if you do, you will notice that the Alps mountains are located in that location. Where Switzerland, Germany, Italy are, the Alps are some of the highest mountains in Europe. Let's look at Sweden and Finland. If you notice, the northern areas of Sweden and Finland have low population density. Not a lot of people live there compared to many other parts of Europe. Once again, you might be wondering why. Well, the climate map will be helpful to us in this case. The climate map will show that those same areas of Sweden and Finland have polar tundra and subarctic climates. These are extremely cold climates to survive in. Now let's look back at the population density map, and let's look at the United Kingdom. We might notice that United Kingdom has high population density. Again, what can explain that? If we look at the climate map, we're going to notice that there is a temperate or mild climate in that location. It's neither too hot, not too cold. Let's practice some more. Let's look at the country of Italy. It has this famous shape of a boot, and remember that shape is called a peninsula. So if you look at Italy, what do you notice about its population density? Is it high or low? Now look at these two maps, and you might notice that this is the population map of Europe and the climate map of Europe. If you look at Italy, what could explain why does Italy have higher population density? Now let's look at Iceland. Iceland is an island country, and this is the population density of Iceland. Is it high or is it low? And finally, based on these two maps, why does Iceland have a lower population density? I hope, guys, you learned a lot about where people in Europe live and why. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to your social studies teacher.